This is part 1 of a 3-part podcast.
Hey, this is T. Blankenship. Have you seen the new video of Wheaton Labs? It is permaculture awesomeness with all new and improved things like more rocket mass heaters, easy bake coffin, Willy Wonka, rocket cooktop 2.0, and the truly passive greenhouse. To see more, go to permies.com/tour. Again, that is permies.com/tour.
All right, we're here.
Ooh. Is it going?
Yeah, we're in the world doing this thing. It's happening.
So I want to call this Grow the Best Gardens with Hugelkultur. And I just kind of feel like in the last couple of days we have really put a lot of time into doing this. And I also kind of feel like there's 10 times more to say here. There's 10 times more stuff to touch on. Oh wow! I'm looking at the slide that's being sent out, and it's completely different than the slide I've been working with for the last week.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Like the font is totally different.
Oh yeah, we went back to Comic Sans, and your computer doesn't have Comic Sans. So
that might be it.
That's this morning's comedy.
I kind of feel like there's 10 times more stuff to say. We've got more than 50 slides, but I feel like I've got at least 10 times more stuff to say about Hugelkultur than what we have in here. But a lot of this stuff is to address a lot of misinformation that's all over the internet. And then plus, I want to thank Andreas for hearing my crazy stuff. And he's like, this is the first time I've talked to somebody that knows how to draw, and it actually exists now. And so I feel like there's still 100 more images to do, like a couple of the images that are in this that he's finally. But it's like now that these images finally exist, I feel like now we can just begin to have some conversations about some of this stuff.
Let's hear it for Andres. Thank you, Andres. Appreciate it, man.
Okay. Let's see. I also thanks to Beau and Liv and Samantha for wrangling this project into existence. There's just like a ton of little bits and bobs that needed to be done to make this kind of thing just exist at all. The funny thing is that while we get asked about this so much, when we did the poll inside the Secret Inner Circle forum, a Hugelkultur movie and a Hugelkultur book didn't do well in those polls. And so, and the poll was like, what should be our next Kickstarters over the next 10 years? And we have like 15 other projects we'll do as Kickstarters before we get to a Hugelkultur project. And so by watching this today and you feel differently, go to the Secret Inner Circle forum if you have access. It's limited to people that have supported Kickstarters in the past. It's, if you have not supported the Kickstarter in the past, you won't have access. All right. Let's see. Let's go on to the next slide. What is Hugelkultur? Pretty much in a nutshell is soil on wood. And we're going to go into a lot about what is soil and different kinds of wood and stuff like that. But basically you're making raised garden beds. And if you do it 7 feet tall, you'll be able to grow your favorite garden in a dry, cold climate without needing any irrigation at all. And in time, as the wood rots, it'll become the best and the easiest garden ever. Next slide. Less irrigation, fertilization. There's going to be a lot of parking spaces for fertilizer. This is going to have to do with cation exchange capacity, but a massive buffet of other things. But it's also housing for just soil life. There gets to be this this phenomenal soil life. Like a good gardener soil gets measured and has a 10% organic matter, but this is going to go way beyond 30% or 40% organic matter. This is going to be home for such glorious, glorious garden life. Higher quality soil makes higher quality food. I think that as organic food loses its nutrition year after year, and that's still more nutritious than conventional food. I think that a big part of permaculture is putting the nutrition back into the food, and the number one way you do that is through glorious soil. This is a way to grow food in desert conditions. Generally, Hugelkultur, the Achilles heel of Hugelkultur is it doesn't last very long in a very hot climate. Andreas, you're here today. You live in Colombia, and for you, the coldest it has ever been has been 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Have you ever built a Hugelkultur?
Nope. Way more into swales.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think a Hugelkultur would be gone in like 3 years in such a hot climate. It probably wouldn't be worth the effort. By the time you start to get to the point that you get the benefits, the Hugelkultur is basically gone. The wood that's inside, the organic matter that's inside it will be gone. But in a cold climate like where I am in Montana, Hugelkultur is brilliant, and swales is not such a good idea. And we'll talk about both of those a little more later on. It's a great way to use sticks and full trees, especially rotted trees. If you're trying to clean up an area and you've got all this excess wood, so many places here in Montana, they burn it all. They make giant piles. And now here we are in the middle of January right now, and the air is smoky. And it's because people are burning mountains of wood from slash piles, different projects. And it's like, oh, we don't want this wood anymore. Let's just set it on fire out here in the middle of a field, and it'll burn very inefficiently and smoky. But, that at least it's not going to be part of a wildfire next year is their mentality. So Hugelkultur is a fantastic way to use that wood. The Hugelkultur can be small, but bigger is better. We'll get into that more in a moment. Carbon sequestration. Some people don't care about carbon sequestration, but when you're trying to build soil, carbon sequestration is great. And for those people that are worried about carbon in the atmosphere, this is far better than burning it. This is going to keep it sequestered for decades, if not centuries. This is a great use for storm-toppled trees. We had a big storm come through Missoula last year and knocked over a lot of trees, and people were just hauling it all to the dump. And I kind of thought, like, what a great time for there to be, I don't know, thousands of new Hugelkultur beds built all over Missoula. But I don't know, people just aren't that savvy about it here or anywhere. End world hunger is one of the notes put on here. It is amazing how once you get it established, how growing food becomes ridiculously easy. And there are a lot of things where it'll just keep pumping food out year after year after year, even if no one's around to take care of it. Noise reduction, more sanctuary-esque. I believe we have a lot of that here. So Beau and Samantha, you guys have been here. I don't know. I know that I do this all the time, where I walk to the other side of the Hugelkulturs, and then a car will go by on the county road, and then I go on the side of the Hugelkultur away from the county road and wait for another car to go by. The sound difference is phenomenal. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that here.
No, it's an incredibly effective sound buffer for sure.
It stores nutrients. In fact, the whole concept of fertilization almost evaporates. Double the growing surface. We're going to look into that here in a little bit in great mathematical detail. Basically, overall, I'm going to say grow double the food with 1/10 of the effort. That's what we are able to accomplish with Hugelkultur. And we'll go into that in a lot of detail in today's presentation. Next slide. The mighty, the glorious, the amazing Sepp Holzer. A lot of people believe that Sepp is the one who came up with the word Hugelkultur, but actually the word Hugelkultur found him. I don't know who. So I know that the word Hugelkultur starts in German, and it just simply means hill culture, which is just raised bed. Nothing to do with wood. But it was the Americanization of it somehow, somewhere, which added wood to it. And if Sepp had done it, as genius as he is and everything like that, his last name is Holzer. And Holz means wood in German. So basically it's like his last name is wood. You don't think he's going to call it like Hugelholz or something like that? Hugelholzer? That would be what he's going to call it. But he didn't. But Hugelkultur caught on in America, and then when we try to describe what he's doing, then fine, that word works just fine. It is a raised bed, but it's got wood in it, so all right. So and also when the word came to him, he was already doing this. And so it is possible that he started doing this before it became well known in the United States. So I know that I made the first webpage about Hugelkultur because when I made my webpage about Hugelkultur, there were no web pages about Hugelkultur anywhere on the internet. And I also know that when I made that webpage, I had already seen Sepp Holzer's 3-in-1 movie, which included him doing these raised beds with wood in them. And so, he was clearly doing it before I started doing it with it. So it is plausible that while he invented the concept, or I'm willing to give him that, the idea of wood in soil and raised beds, while he may have invented that, he didn't attach the word to it until it had been through the American process. So I don't know. People keep saying Sepp Holzer is the origin of the word Hugelkultur. I don't think that that's accurate, even though the dude is a fucking genius, and everything probably needs to be accredited to him everywhere that might possibly be. I do think this is one spot where I take a minor exception. Next slide, please. We're going to see Hugel's in Nature, a nurse log. There's tons of this going on inside. I mean, I've seen these everywhere. I've seen them in lots of different forests, lots of different places. But you really see this kind of thing in action in like the Hoh rainforest. There's oodles and oodles and oodles of it. But just observing this kind of gives you the idea of what can be done and how it can be done. Next slide, please. The plow and the rototiller. So every time you till, you lose 30% of your organic matter. And on the other hand, there's dead organisms that you just killed with a rototiller, and all the air you just added to the soil makes for a great crop that first year. However, the following year, your soil is more like cement. Another thing that's good to say is that when we're tilling the soil with a rototiller or with a plow or the many attachments on a plow, that's a big part of the mission is to try to make the land flat. And when we're trying to make the land flat in order to facilitate tractors, I think it's good to point out, I don't know how many people have experienced this, but being to a patch of land that is like when you're a mile away, it looks flat, but then you get there and you're on it and it has never been touched. how a lot of times that land is not flat. It is really lumpy. So I see Beau nodding his head. Samantha, you've seen this?
And
Yes.
Beau's from Kansas. So if the Kansas guy says that natural earth is lumpy, it means something.
Yeah.
It is almost impossible to walk through. It's so lumpy bumpy.
Mm-hmm.
And so full of all kinds of textures, not just the ground, the dirt, but the plants, all grow in such a way it's like it's very challenging to traverse. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to grow food here. So step one, I'm going to make it flat, which is great and before tractors, it was, horses pulling plows and stuff like that. But basically, to get it to a point where you could grow things in a row. And now we're going to get into this a little bit here in a little while, but a great reason to grow monocrops is that if your monocrop needs more nitrogen, then you can find a nitrogen source and deliver it evenly throughout your entire plot of land. Whereas when it's all lumpy bumpy, it's hard to do that. And if you're going to have diversity of crops, different crops have different needs. And so it becomes, what you're going to do is to add fertilization. You want to do it evenly. You want to add a certain amount, across everything at the same time at just the right amount for this plant. Because the moment you add that, other plants are going to be sad now because it was better before for them. And now it's like you got too much of something. Okay. I want to point out some organic farms till 5 or 6 times a year to fight the dreaded weeds. And so, whereas conventional ag will just spray Roundup several times a year to kill the weeds, or they'll spray something else, perhaps. They'll spray, anyway, I don't want to get into Roundup and pesticides and herbicides and stuff like that, but basically they will chemically control weeds, whereas a lot of the organic producers are just substituting the ChemAg stuff with an organic solution. And the most popular solution for controlling the weeds that they've been taught to fear is to just till more often, which now transforms their soil into something closer to resembling cement. Next slide, please. Hugelkultur is the new and improved lumpy. And so we talked about the lumpy. Next slide, please. Microclimates. So you can kind of see this as a sun scoop. So if this U shape is open to the south, that's what a sun scoop is. Now, I have a video. I think it's on YouTube. I'm not sure, but I'm visiting Eonto Evans, Cobbville, and he has this cob wall with a little roof on the top that kind of meanders through Cobbville, and he has this sun scoop shape. So it's part of the curved wall that's open to the south. And he said to me, it's 30 degrees warmer in there on a warm day. And that is measured, not guessed. So I think I have that in one of my videos on YouTube, but I'm not sure which one, and I'm not sure at what point. But in a way, and sun scoops, I mean, there's probably millions of sun scoops that have been created over the decades, like the one we're looking at a picture of right now. So it's basically a U-shaped thing that's open to the south, and then sunlight gets in there all year long, or not? Yeah, it does get in there all year long, but mostly all day long is what we're concerned about. and then it warms that space. That space in there becomes much warmer and through the day. And then the flip side of that is the other side becomes much cooler. Now, I think that Ianto's stuff got even warmer still because since the wall was made out of cob, it could retain a lot of that heat through the night. Whereas I think that what we're looking at here is going to be challenged to do that. So, which kind of leads to the whole thing about like how Sepultura puts these giant rocks that can barely be moved by a giant excavator in a sun scoop shape like this. All right. Next slide, please. Diversity versus homogeneity. So if everything is the same, it's homogeneous. And so when we have flat land and we're growing a monocrop, everything is the same. The amount of moisture that falls on the ground and the amount of moisture that exists within the soil is the same everywhere. And the pH across all that flat land is the same. The amount of sunlight that gets onto the flat land is all the same. The temperature is all the same. And this can be advantageous if you're trying to grow a monocrop and you want everything to be optimal for that particular crop. However, what we're going to talk about today is adding diversity. So when we add a bunch of hugelkulturs, then what happens is that the top of the hugelkultur tends to dry out, but the bottoms tend to be much moister, and we'll get into a lot of details about that. The key is we want to add diversity, and then when we start growing all kinds of things all over the place, some of the stuff growing in some spots is going to thrive, and that same species growing in other spots is going to suffer. But that's part of the design. And then what we end up with is because we have so much diversity all so close together, the roots of certain plants will begin to intermingle. And these will be plants that normally never intermingle because they won't grow under the same conditions. But now we've got this diversity of conditions all close together, so they can start to mingle a little bit. I want everybody to keep in mind that I believe that there is a massive field of plant nutrition that's just barely getting started right now. It's been barely getting started for probably 3 decades now. And it's hardly moved, but I like to pretend that it's going to take off soon. And it goes like this. The root exudate of one plant is food for another species of plant. If they are both the same species, and this is the big carrot thing I've talked about and so many other things I've done in the past. If a carrot has a root exudate, another carrot doesn't want it because it's the same thing it's going to exude as well. It's like carrots trying to eat carrot poop for nutrition. It doesn't work. But carrots are going to love the root exudate of, let's say, a green bean or even a tomato plant. So there's so many other plants that have root exudates that carrots love, but they do not love the root exudate of other carrots. This is why plant diversity is such an important thing. All right. Everything when it's homogeneous, everything is the same. A beautiful demonstration of making Mother Nature your personal bitch. A few plants do great, but most plants have needs that are different from this exact set of conditions. When we have a mix of hugelkultur, ponds, swales, ditches, terraces, slopes, hills, trees, annuals, berms, trails, picnic tables, art, garden sheds, fences, brush piles, rock piles, retaining walls, trellises, and we embrace nature, it entices humans and rejects tractors. 20 times more plants can thrive here. And this has to do with how only a few plants can survive when everything's exactly the same. And now there can be more polyculture with the root exudate of one plant feeding another. Next slide, please. Okay, so wind. Now, granted, a lot of people don't have to worry about wind, but let's just talk about wind. A lot of people do have to worry about wind. And if you're in a cold climate, or if you're in a dry climate, then it's like, and there's not a lot of wind, let's still take the steps to mitigate that wind, because the wind is going to make things cooler, and the wind is also going to make things drier. So if we can get the wind to go above our growers, can we get the wind to, like, if we've got 7-foot tall hugelkulturs, can we get the wind to go over the tops of those instead of along the ground of our hugelkulturs? So, and this slide is a demonstration of that. The idea is that if we can get the wind to leave us alone, then our plants will have more moisture and they will be warmer, which in a cold climate is a positive thing. Next slide, please. Okay, I see this all the time, and it's like so many people are so excited about hugelkultur, and then they learn about so many other things. They start trying to get twofers. And I need to slap down this attempt at a twofer, and later I'll slap down a different one. But lasagna gardening is far better than trying to grow a garden on a cement driveway. You know, so sure, lasagna gardening is great when compared to a cement driveway. I would argue that lasagna gardening is worse than a conventional tilled garden, but that's debatable. And I'm just not a fan of lasagna gardening, so I can step away from that lasagna. But generally, what happens, and in fact, here's a funny thing: Toby Hemingway once talked about building a hugelkultur that was also a lasagna garden, and I got him on the phone right away. Are you fucking nuts? No. And so he and I had like a half-hour-long argument about it, and in the end, I believe I won that argument. Toby is awesome, and he's a good friend, or he was a good friend before he died in 2016, 8 years ago. Wow. At the same time, mixing these two is a bad idea. And the number one reason, there's a bunch of reasons why it's a bad idea, and we'll go into another reason here in a moment, but there's a bunch of reasons why it's a bad idea. But the main reason is that whenever you have this layer of compost or manure or something green, like maybe hay or something like that, and it starts to go into an anaerobic state, then it will glay. And this glay layer repels water. So then you go to water your garden, or it rains on your garden or whatever, and then everything underneath that layer is stone dry, and you wonder why all your plants are sad. And at least in a tilled flat garden, they don't have that problem. I mean, there's other problems with that, but please, when we're doing the hugelkultur, please do not try to also do lasagna gardening. It's better, and we're going to get into the splotchy thing that I advocate within a hugelkultur and later on. But I'd say please don't do lasagna gardening. All right, next slide, please. This is this is probably the slide I'm the most excited about today. We just got this done a couple of days ago. It was a lot of work. Thank you, Andreas. And the key is that through the mighty power of math, we have proven that you double the growing space. You more than double your growing space with Hugelkultur. So if you've got a small backyard, you can more than double the growing space in your small backyard by using Hugelkultur. And if you've got just a little tiny speck in the front yard, you can more than double your growing space by using Hugelkultur. And if you're out in a rural environment and you've got just this small area that you got a fence around to protect your garden from the deer, you can double your growing space inside of there using Hugelkultur. Does anybody want to try and check my math? I mean, me and several others have just hashed through this math like 100 times in the last week. Go ahead, do it. Do it. Check my math. See if I've got an error in there anywhere. So you start with a piece of flat garden that is 7 feet wide, and we're going to make a Hugelkultur that is 7 feet tall and 7 feet wide on top of that. And so, and I generally leave a little flat spot at the top that's about a foot wide. That's just a personal preference. I do know that when Sepp Holzer looks at Hugelkulturs being built, that sometimes they're being built like this, and he gets pretty upset because it's too shallow, and he says, I want it like this. So even in this drawing, Sepp might want it to be even steeper still. Like, can we get this Hugelkultur to fit on something that's only 5 feet wide instead of 7 feet wide? Or maybe the thing to do is to try to make it 11 feet tall instead of 7 feet tall. And then you can get even more growing space. I think that's generally Sepp's recipe, is to get a much steeper side going. All right. I didn't read the comments. Did anybody go and check my math? Is anybody checking my math while doing this? I haven't seen anything. All right, next slide, please.
Hi, this is Mark. There are a lot of reasons to get angry these days, but I prefer to focus on the positive things that we each can do to make this world a better place. The book Building a Better World in Your Backyard, Instead of Being Angry at Bad Guys, is a great resource for just that. Instead of throwing my arms up in frustration at governments or big corporations, there's a list of ideas that we each can tackle to affect change. Information about this book and other resources can be found at permies.com.
Splotchy innards! So, what I want is, like, if you've got a bunch of kitchen scraps and you're building a Hugelkultur, just take a whole splort of your kitchen scraps and put them all in one spot. Don't try to spread it out everywhere. And then when you're doing some chop and drop, take a big splotch of that, like a basketball-sized splotch, and put that in one spot. And there's all kinds of different things that you're going to do that are going to be in splotches and put them. Don't try to spread them out like a lasagna garden. Don't make things homogeneous. We want diversity. So when the Hugelkultur is done, and then your growies start to put their roots down in, some of your growies that are very nitrogen hungry will find those nitrogen hot spots. And then the growies that are a little nitrogen shy will avoid those nitrogen hot spots. And then if you threw a bunch of wood ash in a spot, then growies that like things to be a little bit more alkaline will love that, and growies that don't like that and prefer something a little more acidic will stay away from there. So, again, it'll create diversity inside of the Hugelkultur if you have it nice and splotchy. At the same time, when it rains, there's no point that's going to create a clay layer that will repel the water. And so it can continue to absorb the water as we go. Oh, yeah, and I've got in here Let's see, grass clippings, leaves, bark, and the bodies of your enemies. All right, next slide, please. Andreas was kind enough to throw this image together for me. I kind of feel like in a latter pass we'll do something more substantial, but this is good enough for now. Go to a glorious garden where the soil is already great, maybe an existing hugelkultur where the soil is already really excellent. And you want to get a blob of soil that's about the size of a basketball. But what's important is don't break it up. Keep it in its original condition. Try to maintain all of the soil structure that's in that blob of soil. And then put it into a bucket and carry it over to where you're building your hugelkultur bed and try to put that blob of soil about 2 feet under the surface. So that blob of soil, if you don't break it up, that blob of soil contains all kinds of excellent bacteria and soil life, earthworm casings, all kinds of beautiful soil things, which if you can keep it as a contiguous piece and you put it into your new hugelkultur, it will seed soil life, beautiful soil life. But if you break it up, it all dies. And so it's just like as when you till the soil, it all dies. So it's important to keep it as a contiguous piece. I call this a soil seed. Once placed properly in your hugelkultur, it'll spread the very best soil life everywhere. Next slide, please. All right. This is an item where there is a lot of debate, and then every time it ever comes up, then there's a bunch of people that are like, here's links to my scientific evidence proof that using cardboard and mulch in your horticultural endeavors is safe and good. And then there's the opposite crowd. Here's links to all of my scientific research and papers and stuff proving that it's bad. And it's like, let the debate rage on. I'm just going to say, I don't want to use it. And this comes from a space of like, okay, you got all the research and you can pour through it yourself if you want, make your own decisions. In the end, I think a great metric to hold up to it is that which one are people going to fund because it does something to their profits? I'm going to say that the people who make cardboard, they want that cardboard to disappear in ways that are convenient to them so it doesn't bite them in the ass later. And so they want it to go away when it's done being used. Now, granted, I also want to say there are ways to make cardboard and paper such that they are great to use in your horticultural endeavors. However, of course, it's like 1/10 the price to do it if you can bring in a nasty chemical army. And so, which way do you think that they do it? All right. The thing is that when it comes to people saying, no, keep the cardboard out of your horticultural endeavors, I don't see where those people are profiting from that. Whereas when there's the research that says it's okay to use in your horticultural endeavors, there are clearly people who are profiting from that. My spidey sense says it's full of toxic gick that I do not want into my horticultural endeavors. At the same time, I think I've shared this story in a podcast before where there was a woman who asked me to look at her gardens. And her gardens were beautiful. And this was like not just in the Seattle area, but a little east of the Seattle. So it's like there's double the rainfall where I was standing on this particular day than in Seattle, which is famous for rain. So I'm standing in this garden, a beautiful, beautiful garden, which gets way too much rainfall, and there's an apple tree that's dying. And the gal asked me, like, okay, can you help me understand why is this apple tree doing so poorly when everything else in my garden is doing so great? And so I looked at the apple tree and I said, well, it looks like it's systemic because whatever it is, it's affecting the entire tree. Let's take a look at the soil. So we got a shovel and we couldn't get the shovel to go in more than like 1/4 of an inch. And it turned out there was a whole bunch of newspaper laid out under the tree. And she said, oh, that's right. I read this article about how if you're having trouble with weeds, you could just lay all this newspaper down and it'll kill off the weeds. Well, it totally worked. All the weeds under this tree were dead. Nothing was growing under this tree. In this land of extreme moisture and not only that, extreme fungal rot. And fungus loves high carbon material like newspaper. But I can tell you, this stuff was 5 years old, and as we pulled the dirt back, we could still read the newspapers. So after 5 years of 60 inches of rain per year, so it's an enormous amount of rain in an area that's just rot city, this newspaper was still kind of like it was brand new. And underneath the newspaper, it was bone dry. This is why this apple tree was suffering. Now, I conveyed this story when sitting on a panel talking about horticultural things. It was a horticultural panel, and I'm on the panel, and the guy next to me, I won't give his name because you might recognize his name. The guy next to me says, well, everybody knows that you're supposed to take a digging fork and go and poke holes in all that newspaper, which part of me is kind of like, I don't think you've ever done it, buddy, because I think that if you went and tried, you would find that you can't get your digging fork to go through a bunch of newspaper that's piled up like a 1/2 inch thick. You can't get the fork to go through it. Plus, if everybody knew that, I would say that this woman was part of that everybody crowd, and since she didn't do it, clearly that violates the whole message about everybody knows. And I then made it a point to visit with lots of different people that have fiddled with this to say, did you poke holes in it? Not a single one did. They just lay it down as is, and nobody pokes holes in it. All I'm saying is, sometimes it breaks down, sometimes it doesn't. And I kind of wonder if the reason could have something to do with like the recipe used to make the newspaper or the cardboard that people happened to use. I kind of wonder if somebody goes out and does this with a whole bunch of newspaper and cardboard from like, let's say 30 different sources. It's plausible to me that they end up with some of it rotted away and some of it did not. And I would have to then say that I think that the recipes of what's used to make the cardboard in some cases is very antifungal, thus preventing rot, and other cases not so much. But overall, I'm going to say I choose to just never use newspaper or cardboard in any of my horticultural endeavors. Sepp Holzer does use it. Bill Mollison uses it. Jeff Lawton uses it. And so clearly I must be wrong, but I can be a deviant among deviants if I want to be. And so I don't use it. I don't know, are there people talking about this stuff at all in the chatty chat? I can't tell. Maybe I'm the only person that doesn't want cardboard or newspaper in any of my I want to try to make food that is superfood. I don't want to make food that's vaguely food shaped and seems to, suckers seem to look at it and say, yep, that looks like a carrot. I want food that's so good that it's almost unrecognizable as food. It's so great.
There's some people talking about using cardboard and having other results, and some people are talking about how it decomposes more rapidly in a wetter climate, which I'm sure is true. And I get everyone's argument, but you don't really know what's in the cardboard, even if you think you're doing your best. And if you're trying to keep only the best of the best in your soil, I'm with you, Paul.
I kind of wonder if we think about, if we just simply imagine growing a garden where the food is so good that if somebody riddled with cancer came and ate out of my garden for 1 week, then their cancer went away. Then I'm not sure if that's ever even possible to do, but I want to think about it. I want to have that thought. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking that the cardboard and newspaper does not help me in this direction. I think that you can use cardboard and newspaper, and then whatever food comes out of there still does look like food. It's like that is still carrot shaped. That is still an onion. That is still a potato. All that stuff. Yep, fine. And it's this hidden element that I'm concerned about. The things that we cannot see. That's my concern.
Derek is saying he recalls an odor from the pulp and paper plant in Prince Albert in the 70s and 80s. Not quite a natural aroma. That's a good point. Your paper mills tend to have a reputation of smelling horrible, and you got to wonder why and what is being exported with their product.
I know that here in Montana there is a former paper mill, and it's currently a Superfund cleanup site, because of the toxins that they used there.
And a lot of people will say, but they've gotten better. Now they use the good inks and the good adhesives. And I'm like, are you watching that closely? I mean,
they can change their recipe every week.
And they're not even making food. Nobody's watching them to care that much. They're going to swap it out. They're going to do what's most expedient. They're not trained for what's even, considered conventionally food safe, let alone restorative, healing, and natural.
I remember many people decades ago would avoid driving by Tacoma, Washington because of the aroma in Tacoma. And
it's an unfortunate rhyme.
Yeah. And it was because of the paper plant there, and it was so vile and disgusting. And you would be miles away from the plant, but the whole freeway was just absolutely overwhelmed with this horrible odor from the paper plant. So, all right, I'm ready to be done bashing cardboard newspaper. Let's go on the next slide, please. Some wood is better inside of a Hugelkultur than others. And but I kind of, and as much as this is going on to talk about how cottonwood, poplar, birch, alder, maple, etc., and long dead willow. Don't put fresh willow in your Hugelkultur. You'll find that you're now growing willow trees.
Unless you want to grow a fence on top and out of your Hugelkultur, then maybe.
Sure. And then, the woods that do not do well inside are going to be cedar, black locust, juniper. But the big thing is that while it's great to mention what's the best wood to put into a Hugelkultur and why, and we can have 7 hours of conversation just about that. I think that the problem with talking about that is that there are people who have this mountain of dead pine that they need to do something with, and it's kind of rotten, but they won't touch it because they're waiting until they can import a bunch of cottonwood. And the thing I want to say is oh no, the stuff that's right there is better than the stuff that is far away. And just because it's of proximity makes it better. And so if you're trying to import some cottonwood and you're sitting on a mountain of dead pine, then I'd say, why don't you go ahead and build a whole bunch of Hugelkulturs with the dead pine now, and then build more Hugelkulturs when the cottonwood shows up, if it ever does. I think that that's 100 times better than building 0 hugelkulturs because you're perpetually waiting for this cottonwood to show up. So the best wood is what you have lots of. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. Logs are better than sticks, which is better. In fact, never put sawdust inside of a hugelkultur. It's great for mulch, but don't put it inside. And we'll get to that in a moment. Weird lumber is good as long as it's never been treated. So weird lumber is okay to put inside. Don't do it I haven't done it very often. I tend to use old lumber or lumber scraps for putting through my rocket mass heater. It just seems like a better use. But generally, bigger is better. However, the little stuff serves a function too. If you have a bit of the little stuff and it's towards the outside, it kind of makes a little bit of a netting, webbing thing to help hold the soil up while things are getting started. But I think that the important thing is like, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is something that I've been trying to talk about for, 20 years now. It can't be 20 years. Can it? It is. It's been 20 years. I've been trying to talk about this for 20 years. And finally, Andreas has made this image so that I can talk about nitrogen immobilization. So the idea is, if you've got a big stick, you got a big log, then a certain amount of nitrogen gets immobilized as it locks to the carbon that's in the wood, and it wants to be locked there to do the compost dance instead of feeding plants. And so you end up with, if you've got big logs, you end up with more nitrogen that's able to feed plants. But if you have a bunch of little sticks instead, then the amount of surface area per nitrogen unit is greater. So nearly all of the nitrogen gets locked up, and there's not any nitrogen available to feed the plants. This is made far, far worse with wood chips or sawdust inside of a hugelkultur, and that's why you should never use wood chips or sawdust inside of a hugelkultur. It'll make it so that hardly anything will grow for years. And you might be thinking, well, then I'll grow only nitrogen fixers. And so I want to throw in one quick thing, and that is that nitrogen fixers need nitrogen for the first month or two to get started, and then they can start to produce nitrogen. And so if there's no nitrogen availability in the soil at all, they won't make it. They're done for. So yeah, planting a lot of nitrogen fixers the first year, that is just smart, and that's good. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But it won't resolve having all of your nitrogen basically locked up with nitrogen immobilization. All right. Anyway, thanks again, Andreas, for taking the time to make this slide. It took us like a dozen rounds, and now I feel like it's good.
We've been talking about this slide for like 6 years, so to see it exist is a really nice thing.
Yeah. This is dreamy. This is nice. Next slide, please. All right, this is a fairly common problem. Someone wants to build a hugelkultur, but they don't have any soil. They just have dirt. And it's like, all right, I get it. And that's basically what we're doing here at Base Camp. In fact, not only do we not have soil, we're trying to build a hugelkultur on solid rock. And so, yeah, I get it. And so then when people complain like, oh, I can't build hugelkultur because all I have is clay, it's like, oh, I wish all I had was clay. I could work with clay or sand. I could work with sand. But rock is tough. Rock is hard. It's difficult to do anything with rock. But we did it. And it took a lot of extra work. what we did is that we laid wood out on the ground where we wanted to build our Hugelkulturs. And we did have a source a few hundred yards away that was sand, arachis. And so we would haul that in. But that was still like dirt. It's just dirt. It's lifeless dirt. Nothing will grow in it. And then we also managed to bring dump truck loads of soil down from the lab, but it's hard to call it soil. It was like forest soil, and it was a spot that was a landing zone, which means that they were like dragging logs to this site in order to mount them onto log trucks. So everything was so compacted that everything there just basically died and nothing would grow there. But it did have more organic matter in it than arachis, but it wasn't really qualified to be called soil. But we brought a bunch of that in as well. And so probably two-thirds dirt, two-thirds of it is sand from arachis, and one-third of it is soil from that landing zone up at the lab, which is 2 miles away. But the landing zone at least had some weeds growing on it, which is a good sign for us, for a gardener. And arachis, we had dug down deep enough, there was nothing growing. It was just dirt, sand. Okay, so, but we did manage to build something. And I think it's rather glorious right now. And it was, even before we got proper irrigation, it was doing pretty good because we were growing something there and we were mulching heavily and stuff like that. But that's kind of the key, is that all right, if you have dirt and you're going to build your hugelkultur, once it's built, now you need to transform that dirt into soil. And the best way to do that is going to be that you're going to grow something in it, grow anything, and lay down a bunch of organic mulch. So like rock is considered a form of mulch, but it won't break down. And so I would say, hay or straw or sticks or something like that. And we'll go into that some more a little bit later. But the thing is don't import materials. And we'll go into that a little bit later also. The key is to have a thick layer of some kind of mulch that will break down and feed the soil. And the more it breaks down, the more the earthworms get hold of it and pull it down inside. And also, it's amazing how even here on solid rock, once we started doing all of the things that build soil, the earthworms showed up. And that we've had some beautiful earthworms that we have found here that are like more than a foot long. So we've got lots of great earthworm happiness going on here. Okay, next up is going to be irrigation. So the idea is that, the more water, because we started off with hardly any water, with zero water, then we kind of tried to find water and bring it here. We did a little bit of that. But if you can bring water in, it helps to build soil much faster. And we've seen tremendous results with building soil here once we got an irrigation system put in. Like once we got a well put in where we could have water. The original well that we had didn't have enough water to really wash the dishes whenever we had an event. And so, let alone try to irrigate things in the middle of summer. So, but now we have enough water for that, and we're building soil much, much faster. But that's a major component of building soil. Generally, if you're starting with dirt, you're going to irrigate a lot the first year. You're going to irrigate less the second year. And on the third year, you might be able to get by watering just once all summer or something like that. So, but building soil is going to be the key. Next slide, please. Never use commercial compost or topsoil. Lifeless dirt is always better than purchased compost or topsoil. And I don't know how many times I have been to sites or seen things on YouTube or whatever, and I just kind of feel like, oh no, and because it's obvious that they bought something and they put it in. All purchased compost or topsoil will contain persistent herbicides. And persistent herbicides have a half-life of 7 to 11 years. And by half-life, I mean like it's going to be around 20 years later still. It'll also have other industrial waste that you do not want in your garden. And so the only way to be sure that you're not introducing this stuff, which could kill all your gardening projects for 10 years or 20 years or more, the only way to be sure is just never bring that stuff in. Homemade compost is great, but if you don't already have some, then just move on without it. Don't be feeling like you can't build a Hugelkultur until you've made some compost. In fact, a whole other podcast for a whole other day is going to be about Ruth Stout composting and how that is so much better and why. And you don't need to do the hot compost. Hot composting has got its place and it's got its beautiful features and things like that. And at the same time, it's got its downsides. Like mostly people postponing their Hugelkultur projects until they have some. Please don't do that. Next slide, please.
This podcast is continued in part 2.
In a world on the brink of social collapse, one website stands above the rest to fight back the zombie horde of corporate trolls. Permies.com. Take back control of your destiny and protect your loved ones from the toxic git coming at you from all directions. Strap on your overalls and start building that bunker of abundance with the good vibes and friendly, helpful insight found at Permies.com.